Hello and welcome to this Enterprise Data Modeling workshop based on BI4ALL. This is a technical presentation. Business analysts and project sponsors are invited and welcome for the first part of the presentation. When you feel it's getting too technical, you're welcome to leave. Today is the 12th of February 2014 and my name is Peter Nolan and I'm the founder of Instant Business Intelligence. So first of all, I would like to say welcome to all the people who are watching this video. This workshop is usually run on-site for the purchase option of the BI4ALL models. Typically we will fly to the customer, assemble the people who will evaluate the BI4ALL models, and we will spend the entire day with the customer or with the prospect to determine whether they would like to buy or not buy our data models. Of course, flying around and assembling up to 10 or 15 people into a room for the day is expensive for all concerned. And so this workshop we've decided to put onto video, put it onto YouTube as a private video, and for those customers or prospects who want to go through this process, we will give them access to this video. This video is not widely available, and if you are listening to this and watching this, please remember you have your company has very likely signed a non-disclosure agreement to gain access to this video. It will be quite unusual for us to give this video to a company that has not signed a non-disclosure agreement. There is a specific portion of this video that is specifically covered by a non-disclosure agreement if you've got access to it. And so I will mark that when we come to it. Now, one of the things we are doing with BI4ALL is reducing the barrier to entry to make it more widely available for more organizations. In the past, BI4ALL and the derivative models have only really been available to consulting firms and to large organizations, and this has been because of the price of it. It was specifically restricted to large organizations and consulting firms by way of price. To reduce this barrier to entry, i.e. the price, we created a rental option, a monthly license charge option. So smaller companies can monthly license charge the BI4ALL models and avail of the benefits of the BI4ALL models. And because the amount of investment is small and extended over a long period of time, we naturally, of course, can't go flying around doing this workshop for everybody who's got an interest in maybe buying the BI4ALL models, because when the price was a purchase-only price and the only companies that we talked to were very large companies, then we of course could afford the marketing investment of flying to the organization and going through this workshop process. While we don't have that big a revenue piece attached to the front of the project, we've decided to create this workshop and make it available for all those prospects who are serious prospects, not just for anybody, but serious prospects who want to evaluate BI4ALL and are willing to make a commitment to put together an evaluation committee and vote on that issue. So that's who should be watching this video, and welcome to you. As I said at the start, business people and sponsors are most welcome to attend the first part of this video and watch our videos online. We would just say this is a technical presentation. It is for your database designers. So when you get bored with the details, please feel free to leave, and of course we don't take any offense at that. That's as it should be. Those who are going to vote on the adoption of BI4ALL are asked to watch all relevant sections. Now, in this presentation we are going to cover all four verticals over the top of the base BI4ALL models, and so if you are not interested in, say, BI4Media, or you are not interested in BI4Web, then by all means don't watch those presentations, okay? If you just have an interest in, say, telco or retail, just watch those presentations. If you just have an interest in retail and web, then just watch those presentations, okay? So we're going to put all 4 verticals into this elongated presentation in sections, and just watch the ones that you think are relevant. Because this is on a video and you may be watching it disconnectedly to your other fellow evaluators, please make yourself aware of all the other voters in this process. You probably won't get together and sit in a room and watch this whole thing in a room together. You'll probably watch it at your desk or even at home in the evenings, because it is quite a long presentation. Once you've made yourself aware to all the other voters or evaluators, please feel free to discuss what you see and hear with them. We want this to be an open discussion in your company. And if you want to involve us in the discussion, please feel free to ask questions on support@instantbi.com. If you want us involved in conference calls and things like that to answer questions such that all the people in your evaluation team can hear the answers to the questions at the same time, then by all means feel free to organise that with us. So, welcome one and all. The purpose of this workshop is for you to make the buy versus no buy decision for BI4ALL. So by the time you've gotten to this presentation, you should know quite a bit about BI4ALL, and we have the prerequisites on the next slide. Now, we recommend that the buy versus no buy decision is done through some sort of voting or scoring mechanism by senior or experienced people. Okay? We don't recommend that you have people who are 2 or 3 years into IT or 2 or 3 years into data warehousing decide on these data models. Okay? We don't recommend that. The reason we don't recommend that is somebody who's only been in IT for a few years or only been in data warehousing for a few years has no way of understanding what it is that we're going to talk about, and so shouldn't have a vote. I'm not a believer in one person, one vote for BI4ALL. I'm a believer in that the people who are far more experienced should get a bigger vote than the people who are far less experienced. So call me unfair or not an equalitist if you like, but I think people who've done the hard yards and been spent 10 or 15 years in business intelligence are the sort of people who should be voting on whether you should adopt BI4ALL or not somebody who's just come along and wouldn't know the difference between our data model and anybody else, and has no ability to know the difference, no background to know the difference. At the end of this workshop, you will have everything you need to make a decision, so you will be expected to cast your vote at the end of the workshop. Now, of course, if your vote is yes right now, by all means cast it now, save yourself the 7 or 8 hours, right? But if it's no, if you're no or unsure, which is unsure is the right place for you to be, no might be a little bit harder, but if you're no or unsure, then this workshop is the place for you to be. One of the things we want to be clear about is the install life of these sorts of data models is 10 plus years. I have many clients who I installed data models in the 90s who are still running the same data models. Now it's 2014. The oldest I know about is 16 years old. I know about a project I put in 16 years ago where the data model is still there. So a data model that lasts, obviously extended over 16 years, but a data model where the heart of it lasts for 16 years, that's a long time. So you want to get the decision right. Further, once they started implementing these sorts of models in Sybase, as far as I know, all the places I put it into, it's still there. I was talking to my very first client that I did for Sybase in April through June 2001, just recently, and they're still running those data models that we put in with the obvious extensions. So a big purpose of this workshop is the install life of what you're about to implement with an enterprise data warehouse should be 10 plus years, and it's worth spending a few days making that decision because you are going to live with it. Changing data warehouse data models once implemented is expensive. Many of the clients that we have installed these sorts of data models into, went with another way of doing models up front, came to regret that, and then migrated to our set of models. And it is a migration. It's a large job to get from their set of models to our set of models. So make sure that what we want to do is we want to make sure that if your decision for our data models is no, you do not regret it at a later date, as others have. So quite often, over the last 12, 13 years, I have done this workshop, I don't know, it's at least 10 or 12 times, okay? So I've done this workshop 10 or 12 times. We've implemented the number of data warehouses we've implemented out of that. And of course, some people decide, no, we're not going to take your data models, and that's fine. As long as we have a fair hearing, we're quite happy when somebody says no. We want to make the fair hearing as fast and as convenient as possible. So some have said no to this offer of our data models, only to come back to us 2 or 3 years later and tell us about their experiences with whoever it was that they chose, and that experience was not good, and regretting the decision not to go with us. That happens, and there's nothing that we can do about that. It's hardly our fault when that happens. We did our best in presenting our story, and if we were not selected, we were not selected. But over the years, many people have come back and said they regretted not selecting these data models. And indeed, right across my career, many of the people that I proposed data warehouses to in the early 90s came back to me later on and bitterly regretted not having taken my advice earlier on. And for whatever reason, they didn't take my advice. So over the course of my 22 years in business intelligence, I've not yet had a project fail where the customer took my advice, not even one. And where customers have refused to take my advice, a number of those projects have had not great results. And in many cases where the customer or prospect did not buy what I was selling, they have come back to me in later years bitterly regretting what it was that they did. So in my 22 years, I haven't had a customer that took my advice who regretted what it is that they did. And there's very few other data warehouse consultants who can say that. Now, of course, when you give a customer advice and they do not take it, that's not your fault that they don't take the advice, okay? Especially what we do, we have a procedure that we use now, that if a customer starts refusing to take our advice, us as a specialist and they as our clients, what we do now, because it has happened so many times, is we write the advice down on paper and we hand it in at the weekly status meeting. And we say, this is our advice. We're handing it to you professionally and politely in writing. You've chosen not to use it, and that's fine, we don't mind that, but we want it in the minutes of the project management meeting that we offered this advice and it was turned down, please. And customers are quite happy with that sort of approach, because when it gets to the other end and the project doesn't work, we point to the stack of documented formal advice that we've given the customer, and we note all the ones that were not implemented and not followed. And we say, you hired us as the experts, we gave you the advice, it's in writing, and it was presented to the to the status meetings, and sometimes even the steering committee meetings. If you don't take the advice of the experts and you don't get the result that you want, the people who are responsible for that are the project managers, the steering committee, and the sponsors, not the people who gave you the advice, but it wasn't taken. So we don't want people to regret the decision to not buy BI4ALL. We would rather see everyone happy with their business intelligence projects. But the fact is that business intelligence projects still fail at a very high rate. I am personally fairly upset. It's probably not the right word. Probably disappointed is the right word. Disappointed that the rate of BI projects failures is still quite high. And the reason I'm disappointed is it's given us all a bad name, and this is despite the fact that men like myself have never had a failure. Dan Lindstedt has only had, I think, 1 or 2 across his entire career as well. So, the leading lights, the guys who've been in the trenches for a long time, Ralph and Bill, Dan, myself, and others, have done our best to make sure that we deliver high quality business intelligence and data warehousing projects. However, all the charlatans came in the late 90s and made life a lot more difficult. And even those of us who've never had a failure, we do get tarred with the same brush. When I talk to customers, I get tarred with the same brush of, well, most of these data warehouse projects fail. And I say, well, none of mine have ever failed. Oh yeah, you're just saying that, that's just the marketing pitch. There's really nothing much we can do for that. So we want BI projects to be successful. We don't want you to regret your BI or data warehousing investment. We think that using BI4ALL is one of the ways to make sure that you get a good return on your investment. But if you decide, no, we don't want you to regret what it is that you decided. I don't want more people. I've had lots of people over the years come to me and say, I really regret not buying from you 3, 4, 5 years ago. I would like to see that stop. I would like to see someone who doesn't buy from me today come back to me in 2 or 3 years' time and say, we went with these other guys and they were fantastic and we had a great project. You gave us a great offer, they gave us a great offer, and we're happy. I would like to see more of that. Funnily enough, I don't see that very much at all. The other thing we want to do with these kinds of workshops is to make your decision-making process as efficient as possible. We want you to be able to make your decision to buy and invest in BI4ALL quickly and efficiently. You're going to be living with it for 10 or 12 years or longer, but even so, we want to make this decision efficient. This should be as big a decision for your company as buying a house is for you as a personal decision, and we want to make that quick and efficient as possible. Now, if you're listening to this presentation, there are prerequisites for what we are about to present you. There is a lot of public information about BI4ALL, and we expect you to avail of that public information before availing of this private information. So the first thing we would do is say there is 4 hours worth of video on the technical tab for BI4ALL. Okay, there is already 4 hours of public video out there, and we expect you to watch that, please. If you don't watch that and then sit through the 7 hours of this, there may be things that you will have missed in that are in this presentation, that are referred to in this presentation. Now, there will be some duplication, some overlap, of course. On the downloads page, there is a box called BI4ALL Downloads. If you open up that box, you'll see about 9, I think it is, at the current point in time, items for BI4ALL Downloads. We would encourage you to read that, in particular the BI4ALL Evaluation Guide. The BI4ALL Evaluation Guide is a very detailed paper about what exactly it comes with BI4ALL. Now, this workshop that we're going through, this presentation, it presumes you are familiar with these materials and will reference them occasionally. You should also be well versed or even expert in dimensional modeling. Okay? What we have found over the last 12 or 14 years is those people who are most knowledgeable are the people who best understand why BI4ALL is a good idea, why these sorts of models are a good idea. People who are less knowledgeable or least knowledgeable, they look at this stuff and it's gobbledygook to them. They have no idea why this might be a better idea than any other data model. And so to give someone a vote who has not the level of experience and understanding to know why this is a good idea is a waste of a vote, and may cast your vote, the accumulation of your votes, in a direction that you may later regret. As a prerequisite to get a vote, you should have delivered at least one dimensional data warehouse as the data modeler. Okay? If your company is bestowing on you a vote for whether you should adopt this technology, but you have never implemented a dimensional data model, I would argue that your company is putting a vote in a very dangerous hand. You should know what it is you're voting for before you get the right to vote. This is not like a democracy. You don't get the right to vote merely by being 18, regardless of what you know. You don't get the right to vote for the BI4ALL data models merely because you're an employee, regardless of what you know. You should have that level of experience. And we would counsel companies that are considering bestowing a vote on people who don't have the experience to make an informed judgment that that is a dangerous thing to do. Now, if you don't bother going through these prerequisites, you will struggle with this workshop, because this workshop will be incredibly detailed. Okay? That's what it's meant to be. This is meant to be the last set of information that you need in order to make your decision, and that needs to be detailed. Now, before we get into the BI4ALL models themselves, I'm going to go through an initial overview agenda, and this is particularly for the project sponsors and for the business analyst. So this very short 5-bullet presentation, this is for the project sponsors and for the business analyst, and I would position it as that. We're just going to give you some highlights of interest, some brief coverage of the data models, the acquisition methods, the pricing of the data models, and why would you buy BI4ALL anyway? Okay, that's the short agenda for this piece. So at business sponsor level, the current number of tables is 846. This is 575 dimension tables and 271 fact tables. Your technology people can tell you that's a lot of tables. All they need to tell you is, hey, that's a lot of tables. That's all you need to take away from that. The number of fields is 28,000 fields. So you don't care what's in them. Your technology people do care what's in them. They can just tell you, hey, a data model with 28,000 fields, that's a lot of fields. Okay? And that's what you should take away from that. Now, we are continuing to develop more models to support more situations. The 3.0 to 3.1 release was, I think, 15,000 fields, 300 or 400 tables. It was a big release. So we are continuing to develop more models to support more situations. So we now have a very wide library of situations covered out of the box. Okay. So the message for sponsors and business analysts is we have a very wide variety of situations covered out of the box, and the models are intended to be customized. So if it's not in the box, then your technology people who are getting to vote on this can customize the models very easily. The bottom line is that it's a very substantial set of models. Certainly it's more substantial than the sets of models we were delivering 10, 12, 15 years ago. Now, the coverage of the data models is really this. It is intended for mass market companies where you know who the customer or the client is. Okay? So this is not intended for broadcast style media, and broadcast style media is going away. The internet service providers and the telcos are now broadcasting to individuals and know who they're broadcasting to. Okay, the terrestrial broadcast to everybody, that's going away. Even large companies like BSkyB in the UK are getting to the point where they know what show showed on what box. And BT has got into the broadcast business with BT TV. In British Telecom, they know what show showed on what screen. They just don't know who sat in front of it, but given that it's a household, they have a fairly good idea. So it's not intended for broadcast style organizations, it's intended for where you know who the customer is, which of course is virtually every organization now. There's very few organizations left where you don't know who the customer is. It's intended for mass marketing companies, mostly, not so much typically for manufacturing and things like that, although of course it can be used for that. In that area, it covers all the major business areas as a base. So in the BI4ALL base, which we will go through with its hundreds and hundreds of tables, that is what you would use just for any company that you walked up to. Now, if you are a telco, a retailer, media or web company, and these things are tending to blur now, if you are any of those four, we have additional verticals built on top of the base models to address the standard functions in those four verticals. And we will cover each of those four verticals in this presentation. When we see interest, we will build more verticals, but I will say we have no plans to do banking, and the reason for that is that IBM and HP have very good offerings in the banking space. So to get over the very good offerings that those two companies have would require a very significant investment from us, and we would then be in the position of being a small provider competing against IBM and HP, and we don't think we would win many of those deals. Whereas in telco and retail, in telco we would argue we've got the best models. Our friends at Teradata would argue otherwise, but certainly IBM is not a competitor for us in telco. Same with retail, IBM is not a competitor for us in retail. So in telco retail, the major competitor is our friends at Teradata. Media, there's no real competitors there. Web there's no real competitors there. Okay. So we think we're strong in these four areas, and if you are a business in these four areas, we're pretty strong. How do you acquire these data models? Well, if you're a €2 billion plus company in terms of revenue, you're probably best off just to buy it as IP. So, if you're a large company, buying the data models as IP is probably the best way to go. Then we will implement it for you, or get one of our business partners to implement it for you, and you can use that over the next X years. In comparison to monthly license charges, once you're €2 billion and up, you probably can afford our data models without batting an eyelid. Now, for sub €2 billion companies, we're offering a monthly license charge billed annually in advance. And so even companies under 500 million can now acquire BI4ALL at a very reasonable price. Now, generally, IBI or one of our licensed trained resellers will customize and deliver your data models for you. That's the normal approach. Now, we are giving this presentation to some companies who want to become licensed implementers of our data models. So if you are a company, if you work for a company who wants to become one of our licensed implementers, welcome. I hope you like the presentation, and I hope you learn something from it. If you're a company who is an end user company and considering these models, today we don't sell these data models to companies and let them implement them themselves. We have done that in the past. That doesn't work because the level of knowledge and understanding required is quite high, and to allow companies to buy these data models and try and implement them themselves is a recipe for disaster, and it's a recipe for us to be criticized at the end. So we don't do that. Now, if you are a company that says that's the only way we're going to buy it, then we'll have to sit down and talk about that. In the distant past, with the predecessors of these models, we trained systems integrators, put them through the training class, gave them the data models. They went back and worked in their accounts, and quite a few of those projects had difficult endings. So instead, we went with the tack of hiring highly trained, highly skilled consultants like myself, like I was at the time, and we would send to each systems integrator or each new reseller, we would send one of these consultants out for 6 to 12 months, and they would bring the consulting company up to speed on the first implementation, do all the skills transfer, and then things worked fine. Okay, but it did require having a consultant who was willing to go live somewhere else for 6 to 12 months, which is a fairly long investment in bringing a reseller up to speed. But that's what was done. So what we're going to do now is say the IBI reseller, IBI itself, or the IBI reseller, will customize and deliver your custom model for you. And we also offer that the IBI reseller will support future customization of the data models. So what you can do as an organization is to say, okay, we have one of the issues has been high turnover in clients. So we have high turnover in our company for the people who are maintaining our data warehouse. We want to take the data warehouse data model itself, and we want to give that to a third party that has low turnover and can guarantee that they will support us over the next many years to modify both the data models and the applications on top of the data models and move forward like that. Okay. Now we have one of those in Europe, qualified to do any European country, and that is Keyword Consulting. They can do German-speaking region. They have a number of speakers of other languages as well. They do Russian, Ukrainian, in terms of languages. So I'm not quite sure all the different languages that people in Keyword can speak, because of course in Germany it's quite common for people to speak 2 or 3 languages. People here don't consider themselves bilingual until they speak 3 or 4 languages. And so we have today a business partner in Keyword Consulting in Europe who you can get all your data warehouse development and all your data warehouse support from. Indeed, they can even host your data warehouse in their data center, and they do that for many of their clients. So in today's world, we see a lot of organizations outsourcing and hosting their operational applications. Great, that's fine. But there's not so many outsourcing hosting their business intelligence applications. We see that as an area which is going to change, and that more business intelligence applications will be outsourced and hosted, because the level of skill, knowledge and understanding is getting higher and higher and higher, and it's becoming more and more difficult and expensive to retain that within a company. And the high turnover rates that we're seeing, particularly in the United Kingdom, means that it's very difficult to retain the people such that you can maintain your data warehouse with the people who have the knowledge of how to maintain it. So given the high turnover rates, we are now also offering the ability for us, IBI or our licensed resellers, to customize your data models, customize your applications, and support them ongoingly over time for very reasonable fees. In fact, very likely less than it would cost you to support these things. Now, in terms of list pricing, I said that we now offer a monthly license charge. So if you are sub 200 million euros in revenue and convert it for whatever other currency you're using, our list price off the shelf is 1,000 euros per month, paid annually in advance. So this means a relatively small company, sub 200 million euros, can get BI4ALL for 12,000 euros per year. Okay, the cost of 12, 15 days consulting. Now, the cost of 12 or 15 days consulting, measured against 846 tables with 28,000 fields, is a very good deal. It is, for all intents and purposes, free. So what you get for the 1,000 euros per month, of course, is here's the data models and all the applications and everything else around it. We will now customize it for you. From the time you sign up to the project, we're going to charge you the monthly license fee. That is, before it goes into production, we're going to charge you the monthly license fee. So you buy the models up front, or you license them up front through the development process. which encourages you to get your first piece into production more quickly. Now then we put price breaks in, fairly simple price breaks, which says at 500 million euros, you're going to pay between 200 and 500, you're going to pay 1,500 euros per month list price. If you're a €1 billion company and up, you're going to pay 2,000 euros a month list price. If you're, that's supposed to say 1.5 billion and up, then you're going to pay 2,500 per month. And as we said, if you're over 2 billion euros revenue, then we should talk about what price you should pay. Okay. Now, as I said, they're the list prices. We are also talking to many companies in India, and we will have different pricing for India to make it more attractive. Those prices are guaranteed through to the end of this year, 2014. If you want other options, this is the list pricing which we are making publicly available. So if you want other options, if you say, look, we want to think about a different way of acquiring these data models, by all means, give us a call and let's sit down and talk about that. So that's our list pricing. In terms of data models, this is for free compared to our major competitors, which we will talk about in a minute. And so for our sponsors and business analysts, why buy BI4ALL? The main reason is that the data warehouse is the foundation of the data warehouse. The data model is the foundation of the data warehouse. It lasts a long time. As I said, the one I know that I implemented personally, the longest is 16 years. Okay? So 16 years later, for the same data models to be fundamentally running, that's a long time. Poor data models are one of the key causes of failure of BI projects. Bad data models, bad project. And still, I was reading and discussing with some people on LinkedIn the other day that 50% of data warehouses continue to fail. And one guy claimed that Gartner recently released a report that said 86% of package type data warehouses failed, which I found surprising because I've been doing package implementations for 14 years now, and I haven't had a failure yet. So when we've been doing package implementations, they always work because of the ideas embedded in these data models. Now, because they do last a long time and because they are the foundation of the data warehouse, this is why we very strongly now discourage getting people to learn on the job to implement these data models or learn on the job to build a custom set of data models. The idea of today, 2014, of allowing anybody, no matter how skilled, to learn on the job about doing data modeling and implement whatever they think is a good idea first time round when low-cost models are available has got to be considered a mistake. I mean, when I first started working for Sybase and implementing the Sybase set of models, I said publicly, I thought it was a huge mistake now that these were available at a very reasonable price to do anything but go with these sort of data models. The idea of developing your own data models to me seemed to be quite foolish, given that the Sybase data models were, in my opinion, extremely cost effective. And we, IBI with BI4ALL, we are far more cost effective than the Sybase data models. The Sybase data models were only available for purchase, whereas today you can license BI4ALL for pretty much a song, and if you don't like what you get at the other end, you can just cancel the subscription, cancel the monthly license charge. It's not a case of like other companies you have to purchase up front, and if you don't like it, well, you bought it. BI4ALL, you can monthly license charge it. And once you've installed it and you're happy and you think, okay, well, this is going to last us 10 years, we want to switch to the purchase option, you can purchase for the list price at the point in time you want to switch it. So you don't have to make a decision about which way you're going to go with this product until after it's in production and working and everybody's happy. You can MLC it through to the time when everybody's happy, and then once everybody's happy on the MLC, on the anniversary of the MLC, you can switch across to the purchase option. Now, the experience embedded in BI4ALL cannot be learned based on just a few projects. A lot of people say to me, well, I've done 3 data warehouse projects, so I'll know everything that's in your data models. This is not true. This is not even close to true. When I first learned the IWS models in 2001, I was arguably the best data modeler in Australia. I could argue that point. Okay, there were a couple of other guys who could argue that point, but there was nobody else in Australia who had the number of dimensional data warehouses behind them that I did in year 2000. So, and as a part of my job, I was the practice manager for Hitachi Data Systems. I was a practice manager for Australia and New Zealand for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was a practice manager for Ardent, who were the makers of DataStage for Asia Pacific. So I had access to vast numbers of data models, not just data models built in Australia or Asia Pacific. Through PwC and through Ardent, I had access to data models for many projects in many companies all around the world. So I was one of the only people who had better access to data models were our friends and colleagues in Teradata, and they didn't do dimensional data models back then. So as far as dimensional data models go, there was nobody else in Australia who had access to more information than I had access to. And I did use that access. I did learn from these things. Therefore, when I went to Sybase and they told me you're going to learn these data models, I thought that this wouldn't be too difficult. I was wrong, and learning the IWS data models was very difficult, and my first project proved a challenge even for me. So when people say to me, well, you know, I've had 5 years of business intelligence, there can't be anything different about these models, that's a mistake, and I can tell you it's a mistake from my background, and I can say that with absolute credibility. These data models have evolved over the ideas of many people over many years. I've contributed my own ideas to it, but many other people contributed their ideas to these data models. Now, BI4ALL is about 5 times faster to customize than a model delivered in an ER tool. We use our own tool, CTL, to deliver the customized BI4ALL models. And we can customize these models way faster than anybody else. The bottom line about why you would buy BI4ALL is it's faster, cheaper, better, and it's a lower risk. That's why you would buy it. So just summing up this first piece for our business sponsors and our business analysts, the summary is we talked about some highlights of interest, just the number of tables, number of fields. Your technology people will tell you that's good. The 4 subject areas of coverage, the acquisition methods, you can buy or you can MLC, and the monthly license charges of the data models. And that concludes the first portion of this workshop.